Most riders think engines die from hard pulls, high RPM, or the occasional dumb mistake. Here's the truth. A lot of engines get worn out by normal habits people swear are good maintenance. Long warm-ups, lazy oil timing, bad airflow choices, the wrong fuel for the way they ride. That's the stuff that slowly cooks parts. So let's talk about 12 hacks that feel a little off-label, maybe a little warranty unfriendly, but actually reduce heat, wear, and contamination. And the last one is the least flashy of all, but over time it's probably the biggest engine saver on this whole list. Hack number one is pulling the airbox snorkel or restrictor if your bike has one. Not every bike does, and not every bike likes it, so don't just start yanking plastic out because some guy online said so. But on a lot of bikes, that snorkel is there mostly for intake noise and emissions testing behavior, not because your engine somehow needs to breathe through a straw forever. Here's how it works. Less restriction can sharpen throttle response, especially in that first crack-off, idle. You usually hear it too. The intake gets deeper, a little angrier. On some bikes, that's basically free response. On others, it can lean things out enough that the fueling feels weird. So this is one of those controversial hacks that works when the setup can support it. If your before and after shows cleaner pull and better response, great. If it surges, hesitates, or runs hot, put it back. Hack 2, clean the throttle body before it gets bad enough to announce itself. A lot of riders wait until the idle starts hunting or the bike feels lazy off the bottom. By then, you've already got carbon and oily grime building up around the throttle plate. That mess changes airflow right where the engine is most sensitive. And no, this doesn't need to be some giant dealer service with a giant invoice. If you can get access, use proper throttle body cleaner, clean the bore and the plate edges carefully, and you'll usually feel it right away. Idle settles faster. The revs drop back down cleaner. Off-idle pickup feels less soggy. I've seen bikes that felt fine pick up noticeably just from cleaning the ring of junk around the plate. That's one of those things riders ignore because the decline is slow. Hack 3, stop idling your bike forever to warm it up. This one makes people mad every single time because they've been told for years to let it sit and get ready. But here's what actually happens. The engine warms slowly, combustion stays dirty longer, extra fuel can wash oil off cylinder walls, and you build more carbon than you need to. Meanwhile, the whole bike isn't really getting up to normal operating condition evenly. The smarter move is simple. Start it, give it enough time for oil pressure to stabilize, then ride off gently. No hard throttle, no bouncing off the limiter, just light load and smooth RPM until temperature comes up. That's the fastest clean warm-up your engine is going to get. Less stink from the exhaust, less condensation sludge in short trip bikes, and usually cleaner behavior overall. Hack 4 is fuel. Use enough octane for knock resistance, not ego. Most people think premium is always better, but that's not how it works. If your engine doesn't need it, you're mostly just buying expensive gas. But if your bike pings under load, runs hot, has higher compression, aggressive timing, or lives its life in hard summer riding, then cheaping out can hammer the engine. Detonation is not some harmless little rattle. It's pressure spikes smashing pistons, rings, and bearings. So if going up an octane step gets rid of pinging and smooths the pull, that's not placebo. That's the engine asking for help. Air and fuel matter a lot, but next let's get into the thing standing between metal parts actually touching each other. Oil. Hack 5 is where people get weirdly loyal to the owner's manual. They'll treat the oil interval like sacred law, even if the bike does short trips, traffic, hot weather, hard pulls, or a lot of clutch work. Here's the truth. The manual interval is a broad compromise. It's not a promise that your engine is happiest waiting that long, and that first oil change matters even more. If the bike is new, doing the first change early is one of the best controversial moves you can make. Why? Because break-in makes debris. Not piles of chunks, hopefully, but fine metallic stuff, assembly leftovers, clutch material, and all the junk you do not want circulating any longer than needed. When you dump that first oil early and you see that gray shimmer in the drain pan, that's your proof right there. That's not magic. That's contamination leaving the engine instead of staying in it. And after that, if you ride hard or your use is harsh, shortening intervals just makes sense. Short trips are brutal because the oil doesn't stay hot long enough to boil off moisture and fuel dilution. Summer traffic cooks it. Aggressive riding shears it. Shared engine and gearbox oil has a rough life on a motorcycle, way rougher than in a lot of cars. So if your shifting gets notchy before the official interval, pay attention. The bike is telling you something. Hack 6. Switch to the correct full synthetic early if your engine spec and wet clutch allow it. Not random car oil, not whatever was on sale. You want the right viscosity, and if it's a wet clutch bike, you want JASOMA or MA2. So you're not creating a clutch problem while trying to solve an engine problem. That's the part people skip, then blame synthetic for their own bad oil choice. Here's something that matters with synthetic: heat stability and shear resistance. In stop-and-go traffic, in summer, on bikes that run hot anyway, a good synthetic keeps its film strength better and takes abuse better. You can usually feel it too. Hot idle sounds calmer. Gear changes stay smoother longer. The engine just feels less ragged when fully heat-soaked. That's not hype. That's what better oil does when it's the right oil. Hack 7 is stupid cheap and way more useful than people think. Install a magnetic drain plug and actually inspect it every service. Not just wipe it off and move on. Look at it. Fine gray fuzz is normal wear. That's the little stuff you expect. Big chips, shiny flakes, or a sudden increase from one interval to the next, that's when you stop pretending everything is fine. This is why the magnetic plug matters. It turns every oil change into a health check. You start tracking trends. Maybe the first 2 inspections show a light paste, and then it stays stable. Good, maybe one day you pull the plug, and there's way more material than usual. That's your early warning before a noise, before a light, before a catastrophic bill. A $10 part giving you engine data every few thousand miles is a pretty unfair advantage. Hack 8, cut open the old oil filter. I know, this sounds obsessive until you actually find something. The filter catches what the warning light never will. If you open it up and spread the media out under good light, you're looking for glitter, chips, weird non-fiber debris, copper color, aluminum shine, stuff that shouldn't be there. Fine dark sludge is one thing. Metallic sparkles are another. And this works best as a pattern, not a one-time panic session. One clean filter tells you less than 3 or 4 clean filters in a row. Then if one suddenly changes, now you've got context. Same with the magnetic plug, really. Hack 9 is the one people argue about because they chase airflow and forget engine wear. Use a quality air filter only if it still filters well. Here's the thing. A filter that flows more air but lets more dirt through is not a performance mod for a street bike. It's a wear mod. Dusted cylinders don't care how good your throttle response felt for 2 weeks. So if you run a reusable filter, maintain it right and inspect the intake tract. If there's dirt getting past it, that's the wrong setup for an engine you're trying to keep forever. More airflow only helps if the engine isn't eating the road. Once lubrication and filtration are handled, the next engine killers are the adjustment mistakes riders never notice until parts are already getting hammered. Hack 10 is chain slack, and this is where a lot of good intentions turn expensive. People set the chain on the side stand, aim for the sticker number, and call it done. Problem is, the chain doesn't care what it looked like parked. It cares what happens when the suspension compresses and the countershaft, swing arm pivot, and rear axle start lining up. That's the point where the chain gets tightest. So if you set it too snug with the bike unloaded, there's a good chance it goes banjo string tight once your weight is on it or you hit a bump. And when that happens, you're not just wearing the chain out faster. You're loading the output shaft, the countershaft seal, the sprocket bearings, all of it. That's one of those hidden wear points people miss because nothing explodes right away. It just slowly starts eating expensive parts. Here's how it works in the real world. Get the suspension loaded the way the bike actually runs. Either sit on it, have someone hold it upright, or use a strap setup if you know what you're doing. Then check slack through the full tight spot of the chain. On some bikes, the difference between side stand slack and loaded slack is bigger than people expect. If you've ever adjusted a chain and then heard more driveline whine, felt weird on-off jerkiness, or noticed the rear suspension stop moving freely, that's your clue it was too tight. Hack 11 is clutch-free play, and this one is just as sneaky. Too tight, and the clutch may never fully clamp. That means slip, heat, and plate wear, especially under load. Too loose, and it won't fully disengage, which gives you clunky shifts, harder neutral finding, and that creeping feeling at stoplights. Either way, you're cooking parts for no good reason. And because clutch wear happens gradually, riders adapt to it. They think that's just how their bike shifts. Then you correct the free play and suddenly neutral is easier to find, first gear engagement feels cleaner, and the bike stops fighting you in traffic. That's the proof. You're not chasing perfection here. You're just making sure the clutch actually does what it's supposed to do without dragging or slipping. Hack 12 is coolant service, and this one gets ignored because the dash temp might still look fine. But here's something that matters. Average displayed temperature and actual hot spots inside the head are not the same thing. Old coolant loses corrosion protection. It also loses performance. And once the system gets dirty or weak, you can get localized heat around the exhaust valve area and head passages, even if the bike doesn't look like it's overheating. So flush the coolant on schedule, and if your bike and climate makes sense for it, a surfactant or water wetter style additive can help with heat transfer. No, it's not a miracle bottle, but reducing hot spots and helping the system shed heat better in traffic is real. The before and after proof here is usually fan cycling, how fast temps climb in slow riding, and how much heat soak you feel after shutdown. If the fan runs less, the bike recovers faster, and the engine feels less cooked in summer traffic. That's not nothing. Small setup changes like chain slack, clutch free play, and cooling protection don't sound exciting, but together they save bearings, seals, clutch plates, and shafts at the same time. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the last stuff isn't flashy at all. It's just the kind of boring discipline that keeps engines alive. First, battery and starting system health. A weak battery doesn't just make the bike annoying to start. Slow cranking can beat up the sprag clutch, stress the starter system, and give you ugly half-fired starts where the engine lights off badly. Keep the voltage healthy, use a smart tender if the bike sits, and check your terminals and grounds once in a while. Strong cranking is easier on everything. Next, protect electrical connectors. A little dielectric grease on exposed connectors can stop corrosion before it starts. And bad connections don't just kill lights. They can mess with sensors, fueling signals, and starting behavior. I've seen weird, rich, or lean running turn out to be nothing more than ugly connector corrosion, adding resistance where it shouldn't. And the last habit is the one I teased at the start because it's simple, and people still ignore it. Don't lug the engine. Don't whack the throttle on cold oil. Don't bounce the limiter before the bike is fully warm. Load and RPM have to make sense together. Cold oil flows slower. Bearing film isn't at its best. Pistons and cylinders haven't expanded into their normal working shape yet. This is the least glamorous trick on the list, but stacked over years, it might matter more than any part you bolt on. So that's the real secret. Engines live longer when you cut heat, contamination, and bad load instead of chasing fake magic fixes. Subscribe if you want more real-world motorcycle advice without dealer fluff, and watch the next video on engine-saving oil change timing. Drop a comment with the hack you'd actually try first and ride safe.